I'm gonna hit record.
Yes.
All right. All right, good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming to CEC 15's January calendar meeting. Today is Tuesday, January 28th. I am CEC 15 President Antonia Ferraro Martinelli, and I'll be calling this meeting to order at 6:36 p.m. We're coming to you live from MS 88. I would like to ask everyone here to please sign the attendance sheet at the back of the room. And if you are on the call in Zoom, please sign the attendance sheet that I put into the chat. I'll add it again for those who may have just joined the call. Before we call the roll, I'm going to invite the interpreters to please introduce themselves in their languages. We'll start with Mandarin, please.
各位家长晚上好，我们今天的这一个活动呢是有中文翻译的，然后如果你想要收听中文翻译的话呢，请拨打电话号码3479664114，然后今天晚上的密码是350218975，然后按井字。如果想要收听翻译，同时留在这个会议室上面收听会议的话，麻烦把你的电话脑都调到静音，然后按入今天的华语专线3479664114，密码是350218975，然后按井字。谢谢大家，新年快乐 ，Thank you。
This is Sophia, right? From just the Mandarin interpreter. I don't think our language line is working because I don't hear anything from there, or it's really silent.
All right, well, we'll try to troubleshoot that. Thank you for letting us know.
All right.
Only one person. I think that's right.
There's nobody else on the line.
Oh, okay. Do you want to just say that a little bit louder so they can hear you?
Sophia, I think it's only you on the line. I'm not sure if Eddie's on the line.
I'm sorry.
I think you're on the Microsoft Teams line. I don't think Eddie is on the line.
Also on as well.
Yes, we both can hear each other, the interpreters. So that means the line is not working.
Okay, so I only see one number in the line, so there's nobody else.
All right, could we go on to the Spanish interpreter introduction?
Sure. Good evening. El siguiente mensaje, verso en español. Por favor, si desean escuchar la conferencia en español, el número de teléfono a marcar es el siguiente: 347-966-4114, y el código de la conferencia es el 503-943-486, seguido de la tecla numeral. Solamente se les pide, por favor, que mantengan los micrófonos de sus dispositivos apagados para evitar interferencia en sonido. Repito la información: el teléfono a marcar es el número 347-966-4114, seguido de la conferencia. El número de la conferencia es el número 503-943-486, seguido de la tecla numeral. Muchas gracias.
And Bangla?
Thank you. The following message will be for Bangla participants. আপনারা যারা আজকের এই মিটিংটি বাংলা শুনতে চান, সেক্ষেত্রে আপনাদের ফোন থেকে ডায়াল করবেন 347-966-4114। আমি আবারও বলছি 347-966-4114, এবং কনফারেন্স আইডিটি হবে 812-035-916#, 812-035-916#। আপনাদের কোনো প্রশ্ন থাকলে আমাদের মাধ্যমে প্রশ্নটি করতে পারেন, অন্যথায় অনুগ্রহ করে মিউট করে রাখবেন। ধন্যবাদ। Thank you. Bangla is complete.
Thank you so much. All right, and I'll turn it over to my Vice President Leslie to call the roll.
Okay. Antonia.
Present.
Myself, Leslie, here, present. Vanessa, she's on her way.
Okay.
Nancy Cruz,
She wrote in with an excused absence.
okay. Katina Rogers. Jonathan Davis,
Present.
Hans Ariata,
Here I am.
Donalda Chumney,
She wrote in as well.
okay. Nancy Randall,
She might be coming later.
okay. Danley Vidal. And Kwame Egerton.
I don't know.
Do you want me to text him?
Yeah, I did text him, but,
Okay.
okay. We do not have quorum at the moment, but maybe that will change. And Leslie, would you like to read the introduction as well?
Thank you for coming to the District 15 Community Education Council tonight. We appreciate your time and we're glad that you could join us. For those of you who are new to the CEC meetings, there are 32 CECs throughout the city, plus 4 citywide councils. Each CEC represents a community school district, and each is made up of 12 volunteer members, 10 of whom are elected by parents in the district, and the remaining members are appointed by the Brooklyn Borough President and 2 high school student members. CEC 15 is a state mandated public body responsible for ensuring that public school parents and the public have input on educational decisions that are made at the school district level. Our council reviews education policy and advocates for high quality education that benefit all of our District 15 public elementary and middle school students. CEC 15 serves 36 elementary and middle schools and 1 high school under the oversight of our superintendent. CEC members serve an advisory role on education matters to the district superintendent, the chancellor of the Department of Education, and to the state and city elected officials. We approve district school zoning lines submitted by the Department of Education. We evaluate our district superintendent. We review the district's educational programs, and we support school leadership teams. We also submit recommendations for the School Construction Authority's annual capital plan. And as of recent amendments to the law, CECs advise in the selection of parent coordinators. We actively seek input and feedback from the public and encourage you to visit our website, cecd15.org, and write to us about any issues you may want to discuss or learn about. Each school has a CEC liaison, and all of our names and contact info are available on our website.
All right, and I'll turn it to our parliamentarian.
Right. Tonight's calendar meeting is in person and will include a public comment period. We will take both remote and in-person comments to gather additional feedback from our families and school community members. You may leave your camera on, or for your own privacy, if you prefer, you may use audio only during the comment period and throughout the meeting. Rules of engagement. When you comment, please comment on the topic. Respect the privacy of others, and please do not include names of children or staff. Guests who make inappropriate comments will be removed from the meeting. During the public comment period, those attending virtually may raise their hand to comment or indicate in the chat that they would like to speak. Those called upon will be unmuted. If you are attending in person, you must sign the guest attendance sheet and indicate whether you would like to comment. Speakers will be called on one at a time and will be allowed 1 minute each for comment. We will hear as many speakers as the time allows. It is possible that not every comment and/or question will be given time. So the best way to get your question answered is always to write to the CEC at CEC15@schools.nyc.gov. CEC members will also be given a comment period. Members will be called upon and are each permitted 1 2-minute comment and/or question. If members do not have a comment, they may cede their time to the chair.
All right, great, thank you. We're gonna dive right into the superintendent's report right at the top. We're gonna do things a little bit differently this evening.
Thank you, Antonia,
Sure,
making accommodation of,
sure, no problem.
family obligations today, unfortunately. So if we can get to the beginning of the PowerPoint, good evening, everyone. I just want to really touch on some celebrations. Is that it? That's. Well, while you do that, I can start, doing some of the slides and just really, this month we honored MLK, and through that partnership, we also did not through that partnership, but through that event, we did a city harvest with district-wide initiative where students across the entire district were participating in community service to their own community of District 15. So we had every school represented at City Harvest, and as a result of the work we did last year, City Harvest lowered their age of community service from 14 years old to actually 10 years old. So we were able to include elementary schools, and all of our schools participated. Students packed apples and grapefruit and oranges for the community of Sunset Park and all of Brooklyn, where in 3 days of that time, they were going to be doing this, which was that Sunday, on the day before MLK Day. But we actually did it on MLK's birthday. It was on Pix 11, as well as News 12, Brooklyn News 12 presented. And so we're excited about the work that they're doing and the continued partnership we have with City Harvest. As you know, we have the Year of the Snake, and that's 2025. Lunar New Year, which is tomorrow. Schools will be closed tomorrow in observance of Lunar New Year. So we're excited about that happening. And next month, coming up on the next slide, President's Day, which is usually the mid-winter recess break where students are off for that particular week. Valentine's Day is the last day before we're off for that week, so that's just another reminder. And Black History Month, and reminding that Black History Month is not just 1 month celebrated, it's all 12 months, but that we put an extra emphasis on what the contributions have been here in the United States from Black Americans across our history. So honoring and celebrating some of that. And then going on to some of the celebrations, we had our District 15's Urban Debate League. They're getting ready to compete later on in the year with other districts and other schools across the city. And as a reminder, our Urban Debate League does it in English, but we also have it in Chinese and Spanish for their competing against other students for that language difference. You see Shahana Hanif, and I wanted to point her out because all the local electeds, wrestler, Hanif, Aviles, and Chair Joseph all donated $63,000 to make this continue to happen across our district. So we're excited about that. On the next slide, we had the District 15 entered the Brooklyn North Spelling Bee, which was hosted in District 13 at PS3. Our students participated, and several of our students are actually going to the citywide competition. I think about 4 or 5 students from our district are going to be going. I'm waiting for the names of the students so that we could share. Again, the next slide just talks about that. If you want to see the videos of our students and the news that went through, that's just one group. Just so that you know, we had 2 groups. We had an elementary group, and then we had our middle school, high school group. So 2 groups and 2 sessions that were going on. As you could see, kids from all ages. It's cute because they compete against each other to see who's able to pack the most apples in the shortest amount of time, but they're also getting to meet different students. And what was great about this, and you don't see this the entire time, some in the middle schools, the kids were competing against each other's middle schools. At the elementary level, the students were actually engaged with different elementary school students they normally don't get to see or talk to. So they formed a camaraderie and friendship and connection. So that was always great to see that still connects to what we see as a diversity plan. We did a plan for our middle school, but how are we starting to engage our elementary school students before they get to that middle school experience? And so that's some of the work that we've been doing as we continue to think about how do we further the diversity plan across our district. So the next slide. PS 261 got to do their March to Borough Hall for the values of Dr. King and advocating for the things that they believe in. And so the 4th fifth grade, I do a social justice unit where they get to talk about things that are important to them. And they go to the steps of Brooklyn Borough Hall. They get to meet the borough president speaks, and students get to speak and read their speeches in public. So that's always an exciting news. The next slide. I'm not going to go into the video, but you can actually reach the video in terms of the parade. PS1 celebrated Lunar New Year with their lion dance, and students who participated in did some of that work. So we're excited about that. On the next slide. What we're going to try to do is click on it. I believe you should be able to click on it. On the next slide. There you go. And if we could just watch the video really quickly. This is before you start it, just really quickly. This is one of the principal visits that we did, which is the intervegetation that we talked about. And we know, and we've been trying to do this every month for you. You might not be able to hear the volume, but you can see it at your own leisure. It's connected. This is the month in December where we actually went across schools to see how project-based learning is living in the actual schools where the curriculum is going. So for example, at 676, which is the first school, you're going to see IM, which is illustrative math, and how students are using project-based learning to create, I forget what they call it, but they're tree beds that kind of protect the tree from oversaturation of water when there's, for example, flooding, particularly in the Red Hook neighborhood, because there is a lot of flooding that happens in that neighborhood because of where it exists in the land. And so students were creating tree beds where they use the IM mathematics to support them in developing these projects that they were creating around the trees in the Red Hook community. So you're going to be able to see that. You're going to be able to see PS29 and some of the work they've been doing. And of course, BNS, a lot of the work that they've been doing around project-based learning connected to the Wit and Wisdom, HMH curricula, as well as the IM curriculum. So yeah.
I'll just like that.
Hopefully you can hear it. If you can't, just visualize what you're seeing. The visualize, oh, yeah, you can hear it. Oh, I didn't know I was on this one. Okay.
So don't stay available to see how they keep thinking out by the box and support.
By the way, the kids created this video. They have students broadcast. So those are the beds around there, and each group designed a different style of the tree beds. And they had to use mathematics, but also real world problem solving skills and strategies. You can see kids are learning how to drill. This is part of their math class.
We had a lesson about how like try it's gone from 6 to like inside, so it's really strong. And yeah, it's kind of cool too.
We're actually not sure if we can pull it off. Like, this Sam, is the one who actually like does all the free coding and everything. He said like, actually, like, it's a good math, we can.
So that's in their classrooms, also connecting science to them.
Okay. Well, history probably solve for you don't know.
Right.
This is actually created by the students, so like they have to give credit to each other. So you see, so it's interesting. But you want to learn too? Yeah, I just saw 146 in the work that they've been doing with project-based learning in their school. This is the principal going over what they're doing and how they're doing it in that school community. those are principals walking around, having conversations about what they're learning from the school's experience, so they can bring it to some of their school's experience. There's some of the project-based learning projects that are aligned to the curricula that they're studying. So we're bringing it to life and the experiences that they need to have in their classrooms. PS 29 from a different perspective on how they've included this one as well. So essentially what we've been trying to gather here is just to consistently show our CEC and our parent community evidence that the curricula is the tool that we're using, but that there's more to literacy than just the curricula and one shift. That there are multiple shifts in literacy. And so what we're trying to show our district is how we're embedding other aspects of literacy and learning into the actual curricula that already exists. So for people who are fighting about whether or not we're doing it where they're only opening books and there's no creativity and there's no opportunities for kids to explore and learn and go on trips and learn from those experiences, not the case. And this is just evidence of how we're doing that. And more evidence of how we're bringing different leaders to kind of see those practices going on. And we just want to be clear that that's the work that we've been doing. Next month, you're going to be able to see what it looks like to be an inclusive school and adding making sure that kids can still do a wit and wisdom curricula, for example, and they still are nonverbal. And because of the routines that are set up to support them in that success. So that's what we're committed to doing, to using the curricula as the tool that gets our kids what they need based on the science of reading, but ensuring that there are still some things that we value as educators to make sure that students still have in their classrooms. And so that's what this was really about. And we've been doing that every month for you to see, so you could see for yourself what it's actually looking like. And I would welcome any CEC member who would like to see that on a one-to-one tour or group tour so that we can actually see what that looks like. So you can actually physically do what the principals did in walking the schools if necessary. Summarizing for this year, so next slide. In summarizing, we have changed a few schools. Instead of PS1, it will be PS24. It's a more accessible school, so that's why we're moving it there. We're keeping 32, where they're also gonna have the extended school year program for districts 14, 17, I think 16 as well, which they've had in the past. We moved from middle school 51 to middle school 88 because it's now going to be open. This site, as you've seen, the scaffolding already finally started coming off, finally, for this particular site. And then the blue that you see on the right with the affiliated schools are schools that are not necessarily in District 15. Excuse me, schools that are in District 15 that are not under my superintendency, but that will be joining us for summer school in this particular year. We have identified our school leaders as always, so we look forward to that work. And we've identified the assistant principals that are going to be running the summer school site. So we're not going to have the problem of looking for staff members outside of our district to support our district initiatives. So we're excited about that. Next slide. I just want to give a little bit of a class size update. We had 26 applicants in our district that were submitted. We started reviewing them in January. The first step of reviewing was the superintendent's office and designee. We had a team of people on our team, along with the HR and budget director for Brooklyn North, who used the rubric to rate principals from a 0 to 3, or schools from a 0 to 3. The rubric included the feasibility. The rubric required them to be able to show that there was feasibility, that there was programs that demonstrated that there was going to be a reduction in class size, as opposed to saying it and not actually implementing it, right? There had to be an approach to recruit the personnel and hire staff members, because you could say you're going to do a plan, but how are you hiring? And so they had to create a plan that was going to address that. They also had to have the budget that aligned with the plan, so that the money that was going to be given would be used specifically for that, and it could be shown that it was going to be used for that. And then the approach had to couldn't reduce program offerings. So you couldn't get rid of pre-K to make room for class size reduction. You couldn't get rid of G&T to make room for class size reduction. You couldn't get rid of this program to bring in class size reduction. So that was the first step for this. Now, the next step is that the UFT independently rates they use the same rubric to rate from their perspective with their constituency, and so does the CSA, which is the community of school administrators that are going to be doing that. Once they get those points, it'll be a final tally for all of the schools, and then they will determine which schools are going to be getting the additional funding to support their class size reduction. I want you to note that as I talk to other superintendents in other districts, a lot of schools in other districts have also applied. So I'm not sure what the results are going to be, but as soon as we have that, we'll share more details and information on that. We just wanted to give you some updates as to where we are with that, because we talked about the application deadline was December 20th. What happened next? We just wanted to share what's happened next so far, where we are in the process. All right, next slide. And I saw this at the front, guidance from New York City in terms of safeguarding the rights of immigrant students. I know there have been some concerns. I know yesterday there was a concern for one of our schools in Sunset Park. ICE was not at the school. They did not show up. It was just a rumor that was spread on social media like wildfire. We put an end to that, but we wanted to make clear. We spoke to our electeds. My team at night was reaching out to the school leadership to make sure that there was none intended. We're going to do what the guidance has been provided to us in terms of making sure that they stop and wait. And then we're going to go from there. We have been working with schools. There was a meeting that happened yesterday on the 27th, which is yesterday, for parent coordinators, which all my parent coordinators attended, as well as my district staff team. There's going to be one on February 11th. The parent coordinators are distributing that to school communities if they want to come to that actual meeting for them. I believe that meeting on February 11th. Is that correct? Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah. So it is on February 12th from 6 to 8. So that's there for parents who want to participate in that, so they're getting the support around that work. And we're committed to making sure that all of our children continue to feel safe in our school. In terms of the next slide, we have some upcoming events, and just the next slide is going to show all the events. I want to thank publicly the CEC for voting on providing funding to the events that we have. I spoke to your CEC president, Antonia, yesterday at DLT, where we're already talking to Neil and team members to think about how we're going to be using that funding. So Shanice will be getting back to you in another week or so. around the Learning Together Day and the Project-Based Learning Day. So we are working on those to get that to you sooner than later, because we know that budgeting
Yeah.
aspects close. So I want to thank the CEC for partnering us with that. And I also want to thank the CEC members for coming out to all the events. At the very least, I've seen at least 1 or 2 CEC members at every single event we've had, and I'm thankful for the commitment that you guys also have. I've seen the commitment around the School Construction Authority. Principals have been very happy with how this particular CEC has been very active in supporting our schools and advocating for what they need. So I personally want to thank you all for that really big involvement and connectivity that you're having with our school leaders, because they feel it and I also see it. So thank you for the work that you guys have been doing as a council, and also the advice in giving me and changing things like having workshops in the evening and the morning, so there's accessibility to all. So thank you for those particular things. And then really few last things. We have another workshop, which Michelle's already working on getting those evening dates, Jonathan. But we have the bullying prevention for February 11th and the early grade math workshop that's happening on April 8th. On the next slide, resources from our safety and SEL town hall. These are some tools for parents to have. The PowerPoint is also here. It will tell you about how we go about emergencies and things like that that happen in our schools, so that you are just as informed as schools are as it relates to how your message and what you're supposed to be aware of and what you're entitled to know as it relates to emergency drills in our schools. I just want to make sure you have all the documents the schools have, but also your rights as parents to know information. On the next slide, don't forget our District 15 website. We spent a lot of resources on this, but we've also made constant updates. So every week you're seeing things on there, whether it's addition to the PowerPoints that are added, any videos or slides or pictures of things that are going on. If you want to know what's happening in our district without having to contact somebody, just go on the site. You'll see everything you need to know. And if there's anything that's missing on the site that you would like to see that we don't have, that you thought might be a good idea to put, please let us know. We're always looking for next steps in improving that, because it's not about us, it's about how it's serving you as a community. And then I think that's it.
Awesome. Okay, let's start with those joining us on Zoom. Are there any comments or questions from people joining us remotely? Go to the interpretation lines. Is there anybody on the Bangla line who has a question or comment?
No question in Bangla line.
Any questions or comments in the Spanish line?
No, I didn't hear any questions from the Spanish line too.
Any questions or comments on the Mandarin line?
No questions from the Mandarin line.
Any questions or comments from people joining us here in person? It's such a thorough job. Okay, let's move to the CEC questions or comments. Danley, start with you.
Yeah, I always have questions, sorry. I have questions about the federal situation, and you probably.
The federal situation.
You might
Not gonna have many answers for you, but
Yeah.
that's okay.
The first one, maybe you do, the second one, I think probably you don't. You talked about the situation with ICE, which is something that's been on a lot of our minds. You mentioned that ICE was not present in that school in Sunset Park, which I'm relieved to hear. Have you been seeing or hearing about increased absences at schools with high levels of immigration?
So for our district, I look at the attendance every single day.
Mhm.
What I am seeing is that for whatever reason, and it may be due to the cold weather, the last 2.5 weeks, actually the last 3 weeks, since we've gotten back from the break, our attendance has been lower than normal for January. But as I look at the patterns and trends across the city, the attendance has been low for everyone across the city. And this is prior to our current president being sworn in. And I think that has to do with the weather and illness. There have been a lot of people who've been getting the nanovirus, they've been getting so many sicknesses, flu, me included, stomach viruses. We're seeing a lot of staff, because this is also including staff members that I'm seeing an enormous amount of staff members constantly out because of the change in weather and the severe cold weather we've been having. That's what I have seen so far. I can't attribute as to whether or not some have been staying as a result. I am aware that some of our families have been concerned, and we've been having more one-to-one and personalized conversations with our family members, and those families have been bringing their students to school. I am aware that there is a heightened fear and concern, not just from our families who are migrant families, but also our non-migrant families, for the fear of, like, if I look like an immigrant and I get pulled, what do I do about picking up my child? So we've been making a more concerted effort to ensure that our schools have our parents updating their blue cards in the event that someone doesn't pick up a child. Who's the next person we can have to reach to pick up their child in the event that they are caught up? For example, some of the mistakes that have been happening when ICE has been picking families up. That's the best that we can do. At the school level, schools are alert. We had all of our school leaders have someone participating in yesterday's professional learning with Project Open Arms. And we've been communicating that information as best as possible. We don't know when or what's gonna happen. We do know what the rules are for them coming into our schools. And so we have systems and structures set up to protect our community, like we would with anybody who comes into our buildings. So there has been a dip. We saw the first dip, week 19. It was very low across the city, as I said to you before. But we are still at 92% attendance for the month of January, even though it's lower. We are currently at 93.6% attendance as a district, which is 1% higher than we were last year. So are we having higher attendance? Yes. What we're expecting now is continued, but we are seeing not a dip, but like almost like a straight line of the consistent absences. But I'm not seeing for District 15 a pattern or trend. That could be different in different boroughs and different neighborhoods, depending on who the constituency is and what communication is going to those particular communities. But I know here we've been doing everything we can, and I really can't connect it to this yet because I'm not seeing it myself.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
The other question, just quickly, do you have any idea about like our Title I funds at risk with this OMB memo that went out just yesterday?
So the answer is no.
No?
Correct. Let me just pull it up. I will read to you exactly what it says so that you have a better understanding of even what the colleges are hearing. I'm sorry, give me 1 second. I just want to read it. Okay. Yeah, and it's also got temporary, but I just want to read to you just from a perspective of, let me go into the general. Certain programs such as things for IDEA, things for Title IX, Title VI, I believe it was as well. All these federal programs that are impacting, for example, schools and communities are not. What they were talking about were discretionary funds that are like, I don't want to call it this, but it's more like a pet project that you would apply for as it relates to a grant as of right now. That's what we've been able to see in terms of what they blocked and didn't block. With the original message came out, there wasn't clarity for those departments to decide what it was or wasn't. So there was a fear that it connected everything. As things are starting to trickle down, because, you know, once people are having questions, you have to give more details. That's what's been going. But to Councilmember Avila's response, there has been a federal block, right? A temporary federal block. And I would imagine you're going to see a lot of federal temporary blocks until we get clarity of what that order means and does it violate the rights or due process of what the laws already are currently exist, so they're not contradicting that. And we're gonna see a lot of that, unfortunately.
Okay, I just want to build off that, if that's okay. Cause I had a question related to the executive.
Was I able to answer a question?
So I know that it was blocked this evening, and I know that there's gonna keep being legal battles, but, and I also, with my own job today, was trying to figure out for my students, like how they were being impacted. So everything you said is what I understood as well, but the other piece is they were trying to block Medicaid. Which directly impacts so many families in our district. And so if somehow that gets through, even for a day. Right, 2 days.
And Head Start.
Like what, what can we do as a district to make sure that our families can eat?
So I can't answer that directly because those are for different agencies that would deal with, like, I'm school system.
Yeah.
But certainly we have pantries across our, yes, but we definitely have pantries in many of our schools already. We have organizations like City Harvest that we've been working with, that if push comes to shove, we would be able to find ways to provide the support for our families. We also have to note that a lot of the money, while there is federal dollars that comes into New York City public schools, the majority of our dollars comes from the city of New York. A large chunk, actually 3/4 of the budget for New York City public schools comes from New York City. And then the second largest portion of state funding comes from the state. The federal funding is a smaller portion that usually is impacted when it comes to Title I funding and a few other subsidies that we get. So in terms of the schools, while it may impact certain things across our schools, if something, for example, like Title IX gets pulled for whatever reason, that might impact our schools' day-to-day operations slightly, but it won't impact us as much as most of the money that we rely on are city and state funding. Now, there is going to be in the February CEC, but we are going to talk about fair student funding even further for the formula for next year. So you'll be able to hear more about that from those that are going to be presenting that information. And we'll be able to get a little bit more details from that. But knowing that you're bringing this up, I'll bring this back to the table to discuss what we can do with that. In terms of our communities, our schools are the hubs for that. So you're going to see a lot of our schools working with a lot of local pantries because the local pantries are not impacted or affected by not always the federal government, because there's a lot of state aid and funding and city aid and funding that goes into some of those organizations. And then some of them are running not with federal dollars as well. So I would imagine that we will continue to work with our partners to make sure that none of our children go without having food or anything like that. I don't think anybody wants to see that. I think that would be a disaster for this administration as well, right? So like, I can assure that we will figure out everything we can as a community to figure out how we support our district and our community, and even our neighboring districts that might need support as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's a question on that. Yeah.
Say this, school based, that are available.
Yeah. A great idea.
So we'll have Michelle work with our PCs to. Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think I took a picture today of signs that I showed earlier. Every school has that, should have that app. We've already, I visited schools today. I visited 3 schools today, and all 3 schools have that information up. So parent coordinators are aware that I'm monitoring and watching that they providing the information that the community. So.
This is so good to hear because at the legislative breakfast, there's several PTA presidents who come up and they were like, we just don't have information. We don't know what the rights are.
Yeah, and a lot of that information came out pretty much over the weekend.
Yeah.
As soon as it came out, we were called in to have conversations about it. And then a memo came out on Friday about providing support at the same time we were at the legislative breakfast. And that's what warranted the Monday meeting, which happened yesterday for all of our PCs and school leaders to be able to understand what's going on. And there's that February 12th date that was put out for parents that actually don't get information. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was really impressed with that video. That was a gorgeous video. I love that. You have like a real professional marketing team putting this out. And it was really interesting to see all of our principals sort of together in schools, learning from each other. It just shows how our district is not working in silos.
Right.
I mean, that's really kind of amazing. I don't know if other districts are doing that, but
some are.
Some are. I mean, we're really fortunate that our principals are sort of willing to.
And that's our principals. I just want you to also know, it's also our assistant principals conferences as well. So we have principal and AP conferences in the same month. They do the same thing, except they go to 3 different schools than the ones that the principals went. So there's more information coming back to a school to be able to support that work. And it's in alignment to the DCEP goals that we have, which is why at DLT, we talk about priority 1, 2, 3, we're showing you how we're addressing all the priorities of the DCEP at that group.
My question is, and I don't know if you can share this, what kind of solutions were schools proposing in their applications Can you give us a flavor of the kind of
Yeah,
proposals?
some had thought about if they were, for example, to shift programming around, shift the program to have like an 8-period day versus a 7-period day to make room for additional students. Some schools said if I was able to hire 2 additional teachers, I can split my classes into this. And so like, for example, if they were departmentalized as a 5th grade, that might make room to add another teacher for departmentalized and then splitting up, even though the classes would be in a homeroom, they could split up and have less students in a particular class. Those are some ideas. Some had thought about if they reduce classes in a lower grade because, or not taking in as many out-of-district students, because we do have some schools that have taken out-of-district students. If I stop taking out-of-zone students to my school, I might be able to do this as a result of the numbers that I'm seeing from year to year to year in the past 4 years. If I only took the zone kids, I'd be able to make room for this. So if I stop taking non-zone kids, I'll be able to do this. And that's a non-monetary way to be able to do it, right? Which would mean that those kids would have to go to their zone school, which would be fair because that we are a zone district, right? But if there's seats available, then you can still send kids to those schools. If we're saying, let the cutoff be 20, if it's that grade, or 22, whatever the number is, then we won't have to take additional students. We, over time, can make that class size reduction happen because we'll have the staff. So things like that. Some schools thought about, like, I have a certain number of special ed students. If I had 2 ICT classes and add an additional class, I can now split some of those gen ed students that are in a class with 30 kids versus an ICT class that might have 21 kids. And if I merged the groups and had an extra teacher, I can now split kids into 2 different classes because now this group doesn't have to be so large. I can mix kids into other groups. So those are some of the things that have been thought about. Same thing with bilingual special ed. So like right now, I have a bilingual program. If I have a bilingual special ed program, I can now put some of my gen ed bilingual students into a bilingual special ed ICT class. And now I won't have a dual language program that has 30 kids and a bilingual special ed program that has 10 kids. Now I can move some of that 30 into where the 10 are and make it 20/20. And the kids are still getting all the services that they need. So that's just some ideas of some of the things that principals put in their proposals to make room for these particular things. And some of them are very viable. Some of them, right there were some very viable ideas about how to go about doing. Some of it had to do with programming.
My son, David, spent about 2.5 hours building everything individually and creating this. We're very, and the majority.
Yeah.
Yeah, spaces, thinking about different rooms to use and how.
Right. 132 teachers.
And just to note that, again, I'm gonna reiterate, it's important. The state requires us to have this done across the city by 2028. So the city is responsible as a whole one district, as a New York City public schools, to get to a certain metrics each year. So right now, this year's 40%, next year has to be 60%. We currently as a district are above that 40% threshold already. Some of the moves that I've already made in terms of moving schools and spaces and stuff like that has already created that 3 to 5% that we were expected to be a target to move, because if everybody moved 3 to 4%, that moves the city's number past the 40%, right? So we're already way ahead of getting towards the direction we want to go. Doesn't matter, all schools are still gonna have to be there by 2028, but we are like ahead of the target that some districts are still struggling to face, right? So we're in a good place as a district and we're moving in the right direction. I think that many of these applications some of them will probably get approved, and that will even move our district even further as more schools will be meeting the threshold that's necessary. But it is gonna take time, and there's probably gonna be at some point some exemptions for some schools, but we're not there yet. This is the next phase of the city trying to see how we make this work by allowing schools to be creative about how they do this work so that it's not a one box fits all schools.
Okay, thank you.
I just had a
Sure.
question about, you said that, they would have to go to their, you have to go to your zone school. So does that mean that like now, like in some schools, you can like, your kid is already in the school and you move and they can
Yeah, so
continue to go there?
What, they'll be able to stay at that particular school, but
Right.
there's a priority system that we have. So
Yeah.
like first is that you're zoned
Mhm.
with the sibling,
Yeah.
right? And then you're zoned.
Mhm.
And then you're zoned for the district, but you're not zoned for that school.
Right.
And then it's that out of district, out of zone,
Yeah.
no sibling. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So like there's a priority listing. So once we fill the capacity at the level, so like many of our schools, particularly in our Park Slope area that are oversaturated,
Mhm.
they're taking their zone students. They're taking their zone with siblings, so like 321 is able to take their zone with their siblings, but they're really not able to take anything else. They have in the past, but because we're starting to move towards class size reduction, they really can't now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
PS 107 is a perfect example where she's a small school, small building, so
Yeah.
there's no place to do it except for reducing the size of the classes. If we
Yeah.
do that, then we're reducing staff at that school as well, which would mean accessing of staff, right?
Right.
To try to maintain what she has, one of her things in her proposal is, I can currently take the amount of kids that are zoned to my school because my zone is small.
Yeah.
If I continue to take, because she does take some kids that are out of the zone, but within the neighborhood in the district.
Yeah.
If I stop doing that,
Mhm.
then I can actually meet class size reduction with the size of my building still.
Oh.
But I have to start doing it now in order to meet it by 2028, because as each year goes, I'm touching on that threshold. And then I might need an exemption for fifth grade because they're about to graduate and we're not gonna have that problem next year, right? That's
Right.
a thought process around like 107. So that's
Right.
one of the things that she's thinking about she can do.
Right.
But then to her point, and it goes to what Nicole was talking about earlier, I still need the funding to keep that teacher.
Right.
Because yes, I'm gonna reduce the number of students that come to my school, which means less money comes to my school.
Mhm.
But I still need to maintain that teacher because it's less money, same staffing, have high paid staff because they're senior staff members.
Mhm.
So I need the money to be able to keep that teacher, but I can make your class size reduction work if I get the additional money. And so that's part of the rubric in determining the feasibility, the hiring of the staff, and is this gonna be enough money to do it? Or when we give you this money, you're gonna say you need more money.
Right.
If you could do it with this money, then we're gonna take a chance to see if it works. And if it works, then this is great because we're saving money as a system, right?
This is a little bit off, but not really.
Sure.
But we're reducing class size, but then like there's so much development that's going on, like in like really congested areas, like on Union Street,
Mhm.
like in Gowanus.
I live
Like,
downtown Brooklyn as well.
where are these kids gonna go? Where
Yeah.
are these families gonna go
So,
to school? for,
so,
like,
so
reducing
there's a
class
few
size?
things with that. School Construction Authority,
Uh-huh.
and along with district planning are always looking at sites where there are a large need for students and they create a capital plan essentially for the next 3 to 5 years. Usually school construction will talk about, there's gonna be a need in this particular neighborhood as a result of the number of the students. The thing with, the Gowanus area as of right now, there are 2 to 3 schools that are in that particular area that are still not at capacity, and they can still meet class size reduction without still being at capacity based on the numbers that we have. I would imagine that in the next 2 years, as those developments finish, School Construction Authority may, with district planning, say there's gonna be a need for 250 seats. And then that's where that thought about the planning of building a new school might come. We're not at that place yet because we still have some schools that have seats available in that area of the district. And we're
Right.
talking about Park Slope, we're oversaturated, we're overutilized, which is why we're making more contingency plans because they have some old buildings that are small that you really can't build nothing next to it or on top of it because of the landmark of the school, but also the space is not large enough to be able to build a school because it's not cost effective to build a huge building for one classroom on each floor, for example, right? That's just not feasible, right? So it's about where we're seeing those numbers, and School Construction Authority could talk a lot more about that with district planning as it relates to that, because they're the ones who come to me with saying, hey, there's gonna be a need for this. Right now, I haven't seen that, not even in the next year to 2. So I would imagine that in their latest numbers, they're looking at that right now, especially as it relates to class size reduction. But I can't answer that question yet, because I haven't seen that need is still there yet. 32 has an extended building, and they have a lot of classroom spaces still available. And there are some other schools in that area that have a lot of class spaces still available, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get that. Yeah, and trying to very we will go.
Yeah. Yeah.
They have an idea of being in there.
Yeah, they have a room that's really large. It's extra large. So the first floor, the first floor room, it's an extended room that they use as almost like a meeting space, so to speak, right? And they use it as like, using them for meetings and art classes, and use them.
Brought in, get that to basically vet her proposal, right? Which she wanted to send from the beginning without it being feasible.
Right.
So she got their approval, their sort of stamp that it would be possible, it would be cost effective, square footage, then the law. We can help you.
So it would build 2 rooms to make the additional room that would be necessary to run the school. Again, subsequent years might change policies and what the DOE might do as it relates to universal pre-K or 3K in schools, but we're not there yet. We're trying to, what the DOE is trying to do is trying to figure out how do we make the best of what we have now, and then continue to think about what's the next step after we've done everything we could. And these proposals were a unique way of schools coming up with their alternative plan that would be most cost effective for schools and the DOE to move those projects forward from a school's perspective, rather than somebody at Central figuring out a plan for the whole system and then it not being what's needed. Yeah, so that's where we are right now.
All right.
So I just have one question. I also love the video. I love all the intervisitation that's happening around the curriculum rollout, PPL. So my question, comment, I know you're doing this work already, but I'm just thinking about some different teachers I've talked to who still, as they're learning how to teach the new curriculum, are still feeling like they're not able to integrate all the creative projects and ideas that they've been doing in the past. And, you know, some teachers I think are just very focused on the curriculum and not able to engage in the ways that we were seeing some of the teachers. So
I'm glad you're bringing that up. I was at 295 today. And that was a problem that they were complaining about before. And I sat today at a school staff development committee that was saying, you know, we weren't to be able to do all these things. And it was just because we were so focused on trying to do this with fidelity. But now they're at a place where they're getting to their next module and they're realizing, oh, some of the things we can cut out of it. And it's not that they're cutting the curricula, but it's like, if there are 10 lessons and 3 of the lessons we've identified that the kids don't need to be taught, they just need to be reinforced, then I can skip those 3 lessons, which gives me more flexibility and time. And that's kind of a little bit what you saw with the PBLs, where they're integrating that into what the kids are already doing and finding other ways to make it more engaging and creative. We're starting to think about how we're doing that work with foundational skills, because the curricula really covers the fluency, the vocabulary, and the comprehension. The foundational skills have to be covered by something else, whether it's foundations, PAF, UFly, which are all foundational skills, or Hegedy strategies. So we still have to separate the 2, because what's happening is everyone's thinking that the curriculum is covering all of that. It does not cover all of that. It covers one aspect of the 5 pillars of literacy. So we're still working on backtracking with that and making it ways that it's engaging in small groups. So like I was at a school today where they were starting that work, and I was starting to see the fruit of that particular work, and then trying to push them over. How can you still do this curriculum but make it more engaging? So for example, if the booklet has 3 examples of something, rather than the teacher reading out each example, why not give the example to each group and have the kids have conversations about how to solve it, and then have them select somebody in the group to share out the response and why they came up with that response, versus the teacher letting everybody work independently, stopping everybody, and then saying, okay, so how do we solve this? A equals B equals, right? Like, and then it's the 1-to-1 correspondence versus that group dynamic that's necessary. And then figuring out how do they create real life world problems and situations, so that it's not just what's in the text, but what kids face in reality in neighborhoods that we live in. It's like I got to see that in a math lesson today, where kids were like so engaged. We had a student who I didn't know, but is selectively mute. And As the teacher's walking by, he's giving the girl the manipulatives to say, I see you're not getting it, because she had a different problem than he did. So I see you're not getting it, so just like he just pulled it up, just put it in front of her. And then she started doing the math problem by herself as a result of him just doing that. And then he's writing the answer. So the teacher came by and asked her a question, and she couldn't answer it. So when the teacher gave her an example of what to do, she walked away. And this student, I was gonna say his name, but this student who is selectively mute and really doesn't talk to anybody, just whispered over, it's not, it's just not. Like, and he's like, this is how you do it. And he's showing her a student who struggles in the class. She didn't move the kids to sit with all of the struggling kids. She allowed them to be struggling around kids who may not have struggled, but he didn't want to show that he was helping her. It's a kindergarten student, by the way. And he's literally like, it's not. So that I pointed to him and I said, great job. And this is before I knew he was selectively mute. I said, that was a great job what you did. He looked at me like, don't talk to me. And just like put his head down. It's the cutest thing to see. Like it's in kindergarten. So like, how are we interactive? And while that was happening, one teacher was working with the group and she gave them pictures and visuals so that they can actually manipulate it. So like, that was an IM lesson, illustrative math lesson. And the way that I'm seeing teachers teaching it is so scripted in a book that they took it out the book and put it on to the table. And then it was like 3 minutes on the rug, 4 minutes back to the table, 3 minutes back to the rug versus 10 minutes on the rug just lecturing. Right? For kindergartners, it was such a big difference. And I applauded that. So I let the teachers immediately know, this is great. Like you guys are doing amazing work. That makes them feel good, right? But also thinking about how are we supporting our parents, right? So we're trying to teach kids to have also executive function in school. But what we're forgetting to do is also provide executive function for parents. And I don't mean that in a wrong way. I mean that in that we learn math a certain way. Our kids are coming home telling us, this is not how my teacher wants me to do it. Like I dealt with that with my nephew the other day. And my sister's getting frustrated with him. But that's because we didn't provide her the executive function and routines to support him in his math. So we're now working with schools to figure out how are we creating videos of what we're asking kids to be able to do in school so that parents don't just hear it, but they can actually see it for themselves so that they now have something to use as a tool to help them brush up before they try to help their child out. So they're helping their child with how the school's expecting them to do it, but also learning how we want them to do it and learning at the same time with their child versus being frustrated. So we're doing a lot of that work and I look forward to doing more of that work. Let me look more into how we can still find ways to do that. I think part of it is doing more into visitations with the teachers, which we have directed our team to start doing more job embedded modeling and coaching for teachers. So rather than having teachers come to the district office to learn the theory and practice around what we want them to do, we actually go to schools and model that in an actual classroom so they can see it themselves, that it can be engaging if we actually engage students, right? So we're working on that. That I'm gonna say that's gonna be something that we're gonna start at the beginning of this year, but it will really be into more fruition starting in September for sure. Yes.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, sure. Hans?
Oh, okay. Thank you so much for a great job.
Vanessa?
Maintaining about academic sense and reducing class sizes and the conflict gave for 1.7. I know that by taking students that are not studying the school district, that they can see better within the 15 in that school. So there was being some improvement for diverse body, which so what are some of the differences we balance the various class size and budget with
Yeah, so I'm not even going to do that aspect of that work yet, because I first have to make sure that I meet the law's expectations. Once I get to that point, I could then think about what would be our plan to kind of use that work forward. But I'm really abided by the law, and right now the law is around zone, right? And so I'm gonna put that back honestly and respectfully to our CEC, who's really the body that helped me decide on changing what zones look like across the district. I can't do that without you, right? You are the voting members that decide on what happens with zoning. That would just be something that you have to be willing to work with me in figuring out to address that diverse initiative. I can't single-handedly say, I'm going to do this because I need a CEC's approval for that, right? So like, it would have to be some thinking work that we do collectively over time and thinking about what are some plans. So I want to invite you to meet with me to figure out what would that look like with district planning and think about what that could look like moving forward. So that maybe that's the next part of how we move diversity across our district and thinking about zones. So like, for example, and this is gonna be controversial, what I'm gonna say now, right? In District 7, I unzoned all my elementary schools. You can do that. We unzoned every single elementary school to give options for families to be able to have flexibility, but also in what they were looking for their child, because we had different and unique programs at the schools that might offer something for one child versus another child. Is there an appetite for that in the district? I don't know. And that's something that I'm gonna need the CEC to help me with in figuring that out. But as we're coming to a close of this term on the CEC, it's also gonna be initiatives that I have to think about as the next CEC comes in and who's on the CEC. Because one of the things that's different about me is while I still hold true to my core values doesn't change who I am and what I believe in, but who I serve and what I do for the community that I serve is indicative of how I make decisions across the district, right? And so if the parent body is asking me to go in a different direction, even if I might not agree with that, I might give some leeway towards that direction because I'm servicing a community and I'm supposed to work in collaboration with the community. And so it's incumbent upon me to make sure that I take some of the ideas of the community, even if they don't align with my vision and mission around that particular work, right? So I'll give you an example. If the new body were to talk about how we want to expand some certain types of program as it relates to our schools, and the previous administrations that I've had in CEC weren't in agreement with that, and now the new body is, I'm gonna work with them. I'm not gonna give them everything that they're gonna want from it, but I'm gonna work with them to give them some of what they want, because that's who you are, and we're a partnership, and that partnership has to exist, and like you're living this out, right? And we may not agree with everything that's going on, but we have to figure out how we come to some form of agreement, right? And so I want to put that on you as one of the members that I know leads that work a lot. And thinking about how do we make those decisions collectively? Because I will not and cannot unilaterally make that decision. I don't believe in that type of decision. Even when I made the decision around which curriculum, that was a decision that was jointly done with principals. When I made the decision around whether or not we were going to do certain things across this district, right? When it came to the diversity plan lottery or not lottery, remember that? That was the decision I didn't make unilaterally. I made that with the CEC members in collaboration. This is what the community wanted. There were several parents that didn't want that, but I went with what the majority wanted, because at the time, that's what it was. And if you remember clearly what I stated that day, I said that could change 5 years from now. Why could that change? Because that's dependent on who's the parent body that's supporting and helping to move those initiatives. You have to have buy-in in order to have those members constantly involved in that decision-making process. And I'm not a dictator, so like I know sometimes my forceful voice, and I know I've seen that in my evaluations in the past. Like sometimes I come across very like it's going to be this way. But in reality, I take everything that's being said into consideration, and I will not make a decision unilaterally. So I need that buy-in and that support in order to make it. Am I someone who believes in diversity? Absolutely. Is that something that I'm going to eventually look at? Yes. Have I been wanting to look at that? Yes. That's a big concern for me, especially for schools that are so small. We have some really tiny Park Slope schools that I can't expand. We tried. 107 got school construction authority to come out to see if we can use that little space that they have to make it's just not feasible. We tried to make a gym, not feasible. Like there's a lot of it. So like I even started looking at what's that 3K program that was about 3 or 4 blocks away from 107, where they closed down abruptly last year, the 3K program at the parochial site. I'm trying to see, because I see that they're doing construction there, is that a site that might be viable that 107 could attach as an annex to be able to do what you're saying? We're still looking at that.
And I just want to add also that I think it would be helpful to pull a few of our schools into the case study analysis together. 17 examples, because we did, the principal submitted the application, have a conversation and ask questions. And she was able to show us data that in fact, the average of students did not contribute to the diversity of the school, student demographic. So, good question. So that may not be a consequence in that case, but it may be a consequence for cases. So we look at the data and kind of have that free lens and see where might that be a consequence, whether it's going.
And also to that point that Nicole's making, I remember that we wanted to do this work so much, and the loudest voice that I was hearing about, we don't want that, was, for example, some of the Sunset Park community. They weren't asking to be able to come to higher performing schools and work close. They were asking to help them make their schools viable and schools that people want to go to in their community, because they didn't want to leave the community. So the unintended consequence of trying to do that pushed some students to a neighborhood that they really didn't want to go to. It had nothing to do with that. It had to do with, we have the right to have some of these things. For example, a NEST program, a Horizon program, these special ed programs that Park Slope area has, we should have those programs in our neighborhood, so our kids don't have to commute for an hour to go there. So like, some of the push for that community has been that, and they still do that. Like Janet Marte and some of the others that I know very well are like, we still don't want to go there. It's just, we want to be able to make sure you're providing us the same type of benefits that some of the schools in that neighborhood are having too. And so it's like, where are our new buildings in this neighborhood? Like, those are the types of things that they have been pushing for. And I know that that's been the crux, and we've been able to do it. Like, we're moving the Global Academy that's opening up in the next year or so, at the new site, 2 years from now, at the new site on Hamilton Parkway, which is a new school, technically on the borderline of Sunset Park, right? We moved the Horizon program that's gonna go from that elementary school to 24 to the middle school. We put 958, an inclusive school, in a brand new building on 36th Street and Fifth Avenue. So like, we have been listening and been more attentive. Red Hook is getting a brand new school, the Harbor Middle School, that's gonna have a swimming pool and all in the building. I mean, it's late on construction, but it's gonna happen, right? We already know, because it's already designed, it's already in the process. So like, we are doing those shifts and changes to meet the needs of the park community, while still also trying to find ways to diversify some of our more affluent schools that are predominantly white. And let's just call it what it is, right? And we're doing that. Things like PS10 is becoming a little bit more diverse. 295, we have still the diversity and still moving in diversity and giving it a shot to grow more. And I'm seeing that it is growing. That we did today, and I was happy to see another interesting thing. Trying to expand some of our middle schools to give more options to kids. This year, we haven't gone into the details, and I don't want to show too preliminary, but 88 got more offers this year for students to come here than they've ever had, than they've had in the past 5 years. And so we know that there's gonna be a larger number of kids now coming here, which. And why? Because of that opportunity that we provide families to know that they're hitting them. You're going to be able to show parents that while you don't see this as a high performance school in the district, from your perspective and the data that you guys get to see on the niche and all the other things that you go on to see which schools are the best schools. What we were able to show them is that every single kid that walks in this building and leaves this building shows significant growth, outpacing the district's average of growth. And that's critical, because if you have a child at any level and they come here, they're gonna move from wherever they are to the next level. And people did not know that. They only knew what they thought they knew about this school based on proficiency data that they saw. But they didn't see that wherever the kid came in as, whether they were 4 and stayed a 4, or a 3 and moved to a 4, or were 2 and moved to a 3 and then to a 4, or a 1 that moved to a 3. They weren't seeing that because you don't get to see that data holistically, right? So
I also think that there's also the information that's just parents get, in my experience, on the playground, or just like, and then it's just like the word of mouth that people are like, there's more kids that are, and they're like, it's a great school, and it just starts to like build, like, I just think that that's also another thing. There's a lot of parents that don't look at anything, they just go by
talk
like,
to each other.
yeah.
What's a good school? And they even ask that question to realtors. it's a good school in the neighborhood. What do you think is the best school? Like, I've been looking at this. Is this a good school? And then
Yeah.
they print out a report, show them this school.
Right.
So-
And they've been, I think that that there's so many good schools in this city, but it's that idea of like people measure, like what is a good school, what isn't a good school, and it's like,
I hate it.
I hate it too.
Yeah, we tried to get away from good school, bad school
Yeah.
Correct.
conversations
Yeah.
in this district. And it is quite possible, though I don't know exactly, but it's possible that some of these out of zone students, had they been attending their zone school, they might have contributed to the diversity of their zone school.
That's it.
So,
And we do have quite a few families that
know,
are out of zone in terms of district as well.
yeah,
In some of our schools.
right. Yeah, anyway, I think
Nancy?
Nancy, do you have a comment? Why don't you come down here? Let the record show that we have two members who have joined us, and we do now have quorum, Nancy Randall and Vanessa
You have
Zalatiuca,
residents.
so we do have quorum. I also want to just offer Alexa, Councilmember Alexa Vilas, welcome. And would you like to say anything, or?
And I just want to thank the council, and I apologize for leaving at this time. I normally don't, but I have to actually babysit.
Okay.
I get to give them back now.
This is the hot seat.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Good evening, everyone. Really good to see you. I guess I know one of the main topics, that I know parents and schools across New York City have been talking about are certainly the rates, and immigration enforcement, and really kind of all manner of the rollbacks that are happening under the Trump administration. So, I guess a couple of things I just want folks to know. As immigration chair, we've been talking all over the city, all over the state, actually. There have been no verifications, engagement in schools. And I think it's really important, in fact, to make sure and to encourage our families that things should be verified before they are posted on social media, because it's really causing a lot of panic and harm. And there is ways to do that. I'm happy to share information around verification, share some information about if someone you know is in fact detained, what are some things that you can do? What are some things to look for? And the most important things, if people feel empowered to both know their rights and know that New York City law stands. And many folks don't realize that because they see this gargantuan immigration enforcement beast and a media that is quite frightening to watch, but it's really important for us to help our families and our children, because we're starting to see the kids' anxiety levels go up, to kind of give them a beat and help everyone get recentered and kind of stand in their physical power when they feel attacked, and how you kind of lean in to think about those things. And, you know, you don't have to open the door. You do not have to talk. You do not have to consent for someone being outside your door. You need a judicial warrant, and that says the judge's name. You can ask for a lawyer. Do not present any documentation. You should not carry your foreign identification on. Should be in a safe place. But if you have a New York City ID, you can certainly present the ID. You do not have to answer. And NYPD, under no circumstances, should be asking the status of your immigration status. It's not their job. And you can refuse to answer that question. Federal agencies can ask that question, but NYPD cannot. So it's really important for folks to know these things and to practice them. There are a ton of Know Your Rights workshops happening all over the city and certainly all over District 15. The UFTs actually have a couple of dates that I will send to you all, so you can also put them forward. You know, the question around, sorry, I had so many different notes here. You know, I think what we're trying to do is lower the temperature of the feeling of chaos that is being purposely inflicted on all of us. This is part of the design of what is happening. All these executive orders that have been put forward, there's a great website called democracy2025.org. It's very accessible. It's a tracking website that'll say, this is what came down, this is what it is, its status, to be kind of easily digestible. Many organizations are tracking, and there are many lawsuits happening all over the country on these issues. I invite you to reach out to your elected representatives, myself, Councilmember Hamid. If there's anything you need to get clarified or you need to be debunked, New York City Council is standing strong to not roll back any of the laws, but to stand firm in what we have built here as a welcoming city. And I want to thank Pep, who put forward a resolution underscoring New York City's public schools are welcoming schools, and that is immigration status, gender, any dimension, and whole persons. We accept you and we love you here, and our job is to keep students safe and to make them be the best that they can be. South Brooklyn Mutual Aid, for those of you who may be aware of them, local group, they did amazing work during COVID, like food to families who some of this is trapped in their homes. But amazing organization. are looking for any volunteers who are interested in maybe doing community defense and rapid response. That's one way. I have a lot of parents saying, how can I support our neighbors? That is one way, certainly. And I will say we are entering budget season. And what a way to start with the directives from the federal government of freezing programs. But thankfully, that is a temporary injunction. But obviously, the city is starting to engage in all these conversations. And so without question, we will be standing firm to fight for our public schools and the services that they need. And how this puzzle is going to flow over the next couple of months with, you know, the impacts from the federal government and state, and all the way down to the local. But we will be standing firm to fight for our schools and our families. There will be a hearing, I want to flag for you all, on January 30th. The Education Committee will be hearing on the provision of special services, special education services. We know many of you are fighting for those services, and it continues to be an important thing. We do make progress, but the need is vast, and we need to continue to advocate for both the DOE, the city, and the state to just do better by our students. Last but not least, let's see, did I get everything? Capital Reso A will be coming up very soon, and discretionary funding applications for the council members are coming up February 19th. Gotta apply. There's no extensions, there's no, sorry, the dog ate my homework. It shuts down and we have no control anymore. Same thing for capital monies for schools. It's February 20th. And I think that might be it. I'm happy to answer any questions that might be or not.
Let me see if there are any questions on Zoom. Is there anybody on Zoom who has a question or comment for Council Member Aviles? Is there anybody on the Mandarin line?
No question from the Mandarin line.
Anybody on the Spanish line?
Oh, no, there's no questions on the Spanish line too.
Anybody on the Bangla line?
No question or comment in Bangla line.
Any questions or comments from people here in person? Gonna go to family, any? Katina?
Just thank you. I appreciate the call to remember that the feelings of chaos are being created intentionally and that finding some calm within that and helping folks know their rights and feel strong enough to assert them.
Yeah, I just wanna reiterate, thank you for your work and for the support that you provided to our community.
Yeah, just that, thank you so much.
And echoing everyone, thank you so very much.
Thank you. I had one question about something we were talking about as a council related to a resolution we're hoping to pass at the next meeting. About the shelters for the migrant families and whether ICE is able to enter the shelters that are not run by DHS. And I know you've looked into that. Do you have more clarity on?
Yeah, so the non-DHS shelters are still shelters contracted by New York City. Right?
Okay.
And under New York City law, there's both city property and city contracts. So they would fall under the requirements of not just allowing them to come in, but to provide a judicial.
Okay.
In order to enter the property, and would have to still see general counsel to get approval for that. So the one thing I didn't mention that I'm actually glad you asked was, you know, this question of passage in between, being in public space. There's no way for the government to say, we can offer you, New York City government can offer you protection when you're in the park or in the subway. That's why the know your rights piece is very important. But there is conversation locally around ways that you can create safe passage for people, right? So it's everything from watching out for your neighbors. If you see activity that feels strange, checking in with them, right? So all things we know, but all things sometimes we forget when we become afraid. Also exploration of, are there places like bodegas that have private spaces? Private spaces are not to be accessed by immigration enforcement agents. So having conversations with the local bodegas around both how they protect their employees and sometimes themselves, but also neighborhood folks if something is happening in the neighborhood. So how to create a network of safe passage and communication with each other so that people feel safer to be. I know we feel really safe in the schools. I mean, families, you could tell they breathe when they're here. It's when they go outside. It gets real, but we can try to create these networks, right? To give people a little oxygen in the meantime, because the stress is real. The same thing for the shelters. The city is looking at a couple of different strategies around how to address this. But it's gonna take a while. But they are not allowed without a judicial warrant in any city contracted facility.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for everything. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. What came to mind was months ago, I did a translation of a document with the organization on the local health. Families who are in New York City, and my part that I translated was on food and thrive, where to go. Okay, and many places require it. And so what you're saying now is really interesting, because one of the things that we were trying to figure out as we were translating was we told people that they could take their ID from their countries. And we didn't specify, right? But I think a lot of people are.
Yeah.
Really important.
Yeah, a library card, if you can get IDNYC, you should try. Some appointments have opened up. The mayor's still not funding that program adequately and have kind of choked it out for a long time, but every Friday appointments open up. So you should get an IDNYC. It has nothing to do with your status. But you should leave documents from your home country. If you get picked up by ICE with those documents, they will confiscate those documents. that could be a bad situation. And so, yeah. Any kind of other ID will also let them figure out how to verify. But don't resist. Don't create a 10-1-10 situation. Thank you. Anything else we can answer, please reach out. We'll try our best to get any resources that families need. Including there are some good videos that are really short. Not everybody wants to read these long, drony documents. We all learn differently. So if you need anything, please reach out and we'll try to get you what you need.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, Danielle Shah, thank you so much for patiently waiting. We have our presentation on our November amendment to, the SCA. Yes.
The hot seat.
The hot seat, for our capital plan.
Yes. Well, thank you for the warm introduction. So my name is Danielle. I'm new to Brooklyn, District 15. But I assure you, I am a decade-old veteran at the SBA, doing what Tamar does here over in Queens. So I hope I'm able to answer your questions. I know I might not have all the district specifics. I promise to take them back to my office and back to you guys as soon as possible with any of those kind of questions. But my primary purpose is to discuss the capital plan, which is pretty much the same going around all 5 boroughs, with the caveat of the particulars, funding and projects that we've identified for your District 15. And it was actually really interesting to get a feel for another borough, superintendent, another council member. So to me, that was very interesting to hear everybody's different perspectives going on in the city. So we can, do you want to do the slides for me? You want me to come back? All right, thank you so much. So my agenda is short and sweet kind of, and then open for Q&A ran by our CEC afterwards. I'll discuss the plan highlights that we have for our 25 to 29, our capacity program, capital improvement projects. We'll talk about some resume and our MWLE program. And we have the common form and then for Q&A. Okay, our 5-year capital plan. So this year, with our proposed amendment, our budget is topping over $20.5 billion. You'll notice that's an increase from last year. Reason being, capital plan is like a live document, so every year it changes. Hopefully every year we get additional funding. And then we break it into different buckets of money so that we know how to budget appropriately. For our capacity for the 5 boroughs, we're looking at almost $7 billion. Healthy Schools Act is $2.28 billion. Capital improvement projects that will go on in your existing buildings is just a little over $7.5 billion. And our mandated programs within the buildings, existing buildings, such as boiler conversions, things of that nature, is $3 and almost $250 million. Some of our citywide highlights for new capacity, $6.13 billion. Electrification, so we want to totally electrify buildings moving forward, and that is budgeted at $1.4 billion to get us started. Technology upgrades as $1.25 billion. Accessibility, we have $800 million to spend there. Physical education space upgrades, $40 million. And cafeteria enhancement experience is $150 million. Further breaking down capacity. So we have the $6.13 billion for new capacities, but we also have to keep in mind that we need a replacement program bucket of budget, and that is $400 million. So I don't know how familiar we all are, so I found repetitive from last year, I'm sorry. But for anyone who's watching, maybe not unfamiliar. Also, our replacement program, so we have spaces and buildings within our 5 boroughs that are leased sites. So our leases could be coming up on expiration and we need to renegotiate those leases, or we need to find new locations that will better serve our students. So that's what our replacement program is. Oh, so sorry. It's okay. Capacity to support our TCU removals, those old temporary classroom units that need to get out of our schoolyards, $200 million. which we are really close to achieving. Playground redevelopment, we have 50 million set for that, and early education, 200 million. Okay, so now we get to some of our District 15 specifics. So I heard we did a lot of capacity in this district, and some of our most recent openings and soon to be opening buildings are listed above. So we have over PS to be named appropriately soon by Superintendent and CEC community at 763 President Street, 451 seats that have just opened, 2024. Also, PS High School at 489 State Street, 367 seats, open September 24. Moving forward to next fall, we have a middle school opening on 46 Verona Street, 557 seats. Of that, we will have 360 District 75 seats. Not sure about that figure. I'll recheck that tomorrow for you. It sounds a little skew. So it might be total districts, I'm so sorry, it might be total District 75 seats on those combined 4 sites of 360. Typically, it's a 96 seat is what they do in a larger site for District 75 component. Nevertheless, 557 seats coming online September 25 there. We have an educational campus on 19th Street for 96 seats on September 26 opening. A middle school over on 4002 Fort Hamilton Parkway, 487 seats, September 26th. And a middle school that will be coming online September 27, 557 total seats. Okay, capital improvement. So those we just saw was about all of our new buildings, but how do projects get created in our existing buildings? There's a couple different avenues that we have where we're able to identify and move forward new projects. One of the big ones is that every year SCA will out with our inspectors, and we go to every single school and every single borough, and we literally inspect every component, whether it's structurally, mechanical, or electrical. We love working with our principals and our custodians who know their buildings better than we do. And we rate every component on a scale from 1 to 5. 5 is the worst condition. 1 is excellent condition. And SCA owns our budget. We look to identify projects and get to all of our 5s every year. We hope to squeeze a couple of 4s in, but we do look to take care and create projects for the worst case scenarios in our buildings every year. We also have our colleagues over at Division of School Facilities who will report back to us. They could escalate projects to us, time-sensitive emergency situations, and then they get fast-tracked as projects as well. We have mandated repairs that we talked about a few minutes ago, such as boiler upgrades. We have very generous council people and elected officials in our great New York City, and we see a lot of projects coming to help support our school there as well. We also have our CECs that work so diligently along with our principals to help prioritize what the district's needs are, and how the community use their needs. And we try to streamline that with our prioritizations as well. Some of the projects that are part of our CIP or capital improvement projects are exterior jobs, similar to what we just saw here at MS 88. Just did I think it was a $23 million exterior project just wrapping up. We have accessibility projects for ADA compliances and upgrades. We have playground upgrades, auditoriums, obviously, and the museums. These are some of our highlights for District 15 as we've currently identified in the plan. This number has grown since last year. It will continue to grow, but these are what we've identified now and are in either in design or in construction already. We have one accessibility project over 10 million. Ventilation, that's a big one moving forward since COVID. 2 ventilation projects at almost $10.5 million. Another big one would be, we have flood elimination at 3 different sites at over $5 million. So ResOA, so we just briefly touched on our ResOA portion and how we can have projects become projects thanks to our officials and their grants. ResOA projects are school-specific capital improvement or enhancement projects that are funded by members of our city council or borough president's office via individual grants. Some of the highlights that we've seen in District 15 thus far in this plan, we've had 17 auditorium upgrades totaling over $5.2 million, 5 electrical upgrades at $385,000, 6 library upgrades at almost $4 million, 14 playgrounds at almost $11 million, 18 science labs at almost $4 million. So SCA, we're really proud of our WLBE program, and we're very dedicated to increasing the participation of our minority-owned, women-owned, and locally based business enterprises on all of our SCA projects, including through our MBL targets on our projects. We also run a mentor program, which provides key support and access to capital business opportunities for qualified emerging MWLBs. Can we have a slide, please? So sorry, that was a quick one, I know. So here we wanted to show what we have so far in this capital plan. So we have awarded 4 firms over 6 projects, totaling over $4.3 million. So here's our CEC request form, which I know you guys are super familiar with. And I did see that you guys had already submitted. So thank you for that, for our January 17th deadline for your top 5. We put 4, still accepting 4 prioritizations after the top 5 as well. I just wanted to, the next slide is our contact information. So I have you on there now. Tomorrow, I know, is out for a little bit. My colleague and director Yvette Knight is available for all of our needs as well. And the last contact there is who you have submitted to for the CEC forms. So that's the end of my hard presentation. I want to turn it back over to our president.
Can you go to see if there's anybody on the Zoom?
Yep.
Okay.
So is there anybody joining us on Zoom who has a question or comment for Danielle? Is there anybody on the Spanish line?
Nobody on the Spanish line, sir.
Anybody on the Bongo line?
No question in Bangla right now.
Anybody on the Mandarin line?
No question from the Mandarin.
Okay. Any questions? Anthony, are you at? Okay, so CEC members, Nancy.
Thank you for being here. I was just going to point out, it's a little funny, it's not anybody on the Bongo line.
Oh, the Bongo line? Yeah.
That was exciting. What school is the customer receiving the accessibility upgrade right
So that information I don't have, but I will look at that and revert back to Steve.
And then being that so many schools don't have accessibility features, is there a budget that the district is allocated for accessibility?
A specific budget just for District 715?
Yeah.
So no, we don't chop up the 800 million into all the 34 districts and or citywide. What we do is we work with Office of Space Planning and their team. DOE actually will identify using a criteria of like a radius around different schools and miles within the districts, where they have accessible buildings, where they need accessible buildings. So that's how accessibility projects get created. They're identified as to where within each within each district and sub-district within the zone, what are available and then what needs to be coming available online.
So if there's a school that already is accessible, then a nearby school won't. Well, it won't be prioritized.
It will be prioritized. So I think with the mantra is right now is to try to get more geography, so to speak, and getting those schools accessible. And then I hope we continue with our program, which I know we will in budget, to continue to chip away at it. Another good thing too, like when we have major projects, say we're coming in here to do an auditorium renovation, and we're gonna touch some component of the stage, then that will trigger an accessibility compliance to be upheld, which could incorporate, say, we don't do chairlifts, but we would do like a mini elevator lift. Another thing, like if we did seating, so as soon as we start reconfiguring and taking out seats to redo them or renovate them, we would trigger an ADA compliance for seating. So there would be appropriate companion seating that will be incorporated and proper width for wheelchairs to be brought in. Sometimes, it sounds odd, but you wouldn't have a way to get into an auditorium, but the auditorium, if you got here, would be in compliance. And the hope is that as we continue to do other projects, along with our colleagues at DSF and on the stage, that it just, you're always working, striving towards getting that building into full compliance, even if you can't do a full compliance job at once. They're quite expensive. So the $800 million, which looks so great, really does get used up quickly on not a lot of buildings, unfortunately. Our older buildings are very tricky and very costly to bring into compliance. Thank you. You're welcome.
Victoria?
Is that $10 million elevated? Is that likely an elevated?
I'm being truly honest with you, I don't know, but if you give me till like tomorrow, I'll go first thing in the morning and ask my Brooklyn folks.
So I'm often asked how successful our councils are in getting their, seeing their top 5 come to fruition in the capital plan. And I've never seen, I've been here 8 years, I've never seen any of our recommendations that I'm aware of get implemented into the capital plan, but maybe I feel like a full evaluation of this hasn't been done. Is there any way that your office can tell us how successful we are in identifying projects that actually been implemented? Like, what are the?
I think this kind of like probably like a multiple question, right? So it's like, how successful is the CEC in identifying projects that are 1, capital eligible, 2, meet BCAS requirements, and then where is it rated? So I have in my 10 years, I can say that I have seen CECs in clean, but I can go, they have had projects that have become a project. Some were like due to, coincidental, it was on our radar anyways, but their prioritization definitely had us help streamline, which we needed to do before we needed to do something else. But I also have seen a multitude of projects come through that are not capitally eligible, or they're rated on the BCAS in, let's say like a 3 or even or 2, and they don't quite yet, they're not bad enough to become a project. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
It seems like we've never hit that in terms of finding one project on our top 5 that gets capital, fits into the capital plan. And it's just like, every year we have Carmine come out and he talks to us, then it has to be, like you're saying, at level 5 or 6, like
5, yeah. 5 is one.
5. And then he goes through our copious list of projects and repairs, and he identifies one, well, maybe this one, Mr. Capital, is a capital improvement. And then we always have this vote from level 5. Couldn't your office do a little like audit and let us know if any of our projects have ever?
So I'll let the department that handles the request form specifically, if they have a calculation or tool that they can create or share that would show matching success rates.
Well, I don't know, just like, has District 15 ever, suggested a capital plan project and made it, I haven't seen one.
Okay. I can ask for sure.
Yeah.
I know I personally have seen them become capital plan.
No, but this district.
Not this district, obviously, but I mean, that's for my 10 years there, and I meet with the same folks year after year and work together with the DDS and with the CEC, and especially when we have new CECs, I feel compelled to help, teach them how to look through the BCAS so that it could be a good, meaningful prioritization for the district, not to go in blind. It's tough otherwise. It's a lot of information to read on the BCAS. Each school has a lot of pages on that BCAS report. So I know, like, we rely a lot on our custodians, for feedback. You know, we talk to them, while we're doing the assessments, and it is a great idea, and I'm happy to hear that you guys do start with, with him. I know he's not your custodian, he's the custodian's bosses, and that's great because he really can offer great guidance on, what's like, oh, you look at this, it's fine still, or, like this definitely isn't eligible, so that's good to hear. But regarding the specific projects, if there's been any that have been created based on the prioritizations, I can answer questions. For you.
Leslie? Stanley? Kwame?
Yes, I have a question. Pardon me, I came in late and I missed a big portion of your, excellent presentation.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for providing it. I'm brand new to the CEC. I'm a parent of, PS15, who's going, massive, capital gains, projects. We received big, projects. We have a big project that's
underway
right
yes.
now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious as to how it works. And, my damn president, Antonia, has explained a lot of it, but I'm still a little confused, just as a parent. Now, in regards to the money, is there a portion of it allotted to each district? Like, say District 15 gets 1 billion, District so-and-so gets 2 billion, and so forth. How does it work? Like, are we guaranteed a portion of the pot, or is it, the squeakiest wheel gets oiled first, and then everybody else has to squeak on, so to speak? Like, how does that work?
Sure. I'm happy to try to help explain that. So it's definitely not the squeakiest wheel. That's not how we roll, right? So we really rely on our BCAS reports to survey the schools. And based on every rating of every school in every borough, we sit down with this massive list of things that are in need, and we say, okay, how are we going to prioritize this? So things that are, what I was explaining earlier, sir, was things get rated from a 1 to a 5. And I don't know how much you heard, so I'm sorry if it's repetitive. So we really, 1 is the best. Like, this is a good auditorium. This is a beautiful auditorium. We would never come in here and do renovation. Your seats are gorgeous, your floors are level, you have no tripping hazards, it's in good shape. Curtains look good. But ones that we came in and it would be a 5, like we have, unlevel flooring, or the seats would be busted and you can't fix them anymore. DSF is exhausted fixing them, or your curtains have no fireproofing, or your curtains are falling and the projectors don't work, then that we would rate that a 5. So those are the kind of projects that we would look at. So we don't take the big bucket of money and just chop it up into districts. Because if one particular district 1 year has double the amount of schools most districts have that are in more need, then those are the schools we need to put our funding towards. So we have to keep our schools watertight. We have to keep the roofs good. We have to keep, water is the big thing for us. So when we have buildings that have roof leaks or parapets that are leaking or windows that don't close or can't operate, those are major projects for us. And our priorities are in line with the ratings of the 5 and keeping our buildings structure secure and watertight. So we don't use any kind of a method and just divide it up equally. We go by what buildings are in the most need, and those are the buildings, no matter where they fall geographically, all of it gets funded. So in my 10 years here, I've seen like, it all kind of evens out over the years. So I've had districts that say to me, hey, Danielle, I think you're full of it. You're definitely funding this squeaky wheel district more than you're funding this district. So then I'll pull reports and I'll say, well, let's take a look at 5 years. One year, maybe one district has an extra 10 million, but then that district has less than the next year because now we've taken care of the major problems in that district or in specific buildings within that district. And then the next year you see a flop, another district gets money. Me and Queens, I hold a couple of districts, and this year I have one district that's like blowing me out of the water, so many projects in, because those buildings, for whatever reason, they've all aged out. And now I'm heavy into one district more than I am my other 3. But in recent years, I've had one district where I've created 10,000 seats in 1 decade. And the other districts need 2,500 seats based on need. So we really need to focus, and as an agency, we have to stay really focused on where the needs are. Seat needs, building repair needs. When you have other projects, like, I want to say the fun projects, like the playgrounds upgrades, which are necessary, but we don't get to until there are 5. But that's when our electeds are really big in helping to support the needs of our schools, because they can pick which schools they want to fund to do whatever projects the school and the council person or elected official feels they want to invest in, whether it be a science lab or auditorium, even electrical upgrades they help with, bathroom renovations, things of that nature. So the reservoir projects don't need to wait to get to be a 5. They can go at any time that they're funded.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Katina?
Yeah, okay, so one thing, just to make sure I'm understanding correctly, and then a question. So it sounds like when the CEC is prioritizing projects, there's no point in us trying to prioritize something that's not in bad shape.
That's correct.
I think I misunderstood that.
I mean, I'm really straightforward with you.
I appreciate knowing that,
Yeah.
because one of the things we were wondering as we were putting our vote together was why, so many of the projects that we're prioritizing are things that are really essential maintenance. It's water seepage, it's electrical problems. And that didn't feel like a strategic role that the CEC was playing to point out those things if they're already on the SCA's radar.
Sure.
We had been talking to principals to hear what they felt like their schools' communities needed. And I think this is my first year on the CEC as well. I thought that there was a little more space for the CEC to be recommending more projects. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's kind of disappointing, actually.
I think that if we were to, I'm trying to word this properly, I'm sorry. So if we were to prioritize something that was in rough shape, and we were to then exclude something that was in dire need, that would not be responsible.
Yeah.
So we do collect all our data from our annual reports, and we do look at all of the prioritizations. I mean, we get thousands of them from the CEC, then we do coordinate and sift through them all district by district to see what's in line. And there are sometimes projects that are like on the cusp, which we're not going to look at till maybe next year. But if the CEC says, hey, this is a priority for our district, and it makes sense based off of the ratings, then that will help to elevate that project for prioritization this year versus waiting till we get to it next year or the year after. So there is a lot of value in our CECs because, again, I have to go back to what our principals and custodians give feedback off of as well, because we're just looking at the building and we're rating things as we see it in real time. And we have very qualified, very knowledgeable inspectors. But when you speak to the custodian who says, this looks okay, but I have to do ABC things to get it looking like this every day. That's very helpful, because that changes our rating also. And then when our CECs say, hey, our principals, obviously we know if it's on here, it's because you're getting it from parent feedback, principal feedback, and you're not gonna rate something just because it's a whim for you guys. And we value that input because we know it's coming from the sources that live in the building. So that does help. And I know it can seem really frustrating, because of some districts pour in like 100 and we have to say it's ineligible or we can't fund it. So I can really imagine how frustrating that feels, with all the time you dedicate to that and principals dedicate to helping to prioritize with you and giving you the information. But the system, it does work. It just, I think maybe, the criteria maybe has to just be looked at in a different way to help make better sense of the prioritizations with our prioritizations, and they all kind of streamline better.
Okay.
We were, sorry, I just going, we were also told that we should not put anything related to accessibility on the list because that should be taken care of separately. And I just want to get that clarification from you because there are multiple accessibility projects that we would have considered putting in the top 5 that we did not because we had been told before that accessibility should be a separate pot that should be looked into on its own. I know Antonia sent a list of all those accessibility projects.
So if I could, I don't want to give you bad information, so if I could reserve that for a follow-up email with you, because like I stated, accessibility projects really like the onset of just a purely accessibility project or ADA compliance project comes from our colleagues with Office of Space Planning, which help to identify what buildings are needed within the DOE system. And then ours are an automatic trigger when we do certain projects that we will do a certain percentage of accessibility with all of our capital projects. So I don't know how to guide you at this moment on that, but I would like to take a chance just to explore with my accessibility department. I can give you a better answer than what I have. Okay.
Nancy and Leslie, I think you had questions.
Well, mine, based on your response to Katina, it made me consider, would it actually make more sense if this was a little bit more of a two-way street? So that instead of the CEC, and I'm not sure if maybe this is something that you can take back, an idea where, instead of the CEC putting together and submitting to you guys, and then it goes into kind of this space that we don't know anything about, maybe you guys could also let us know what you are prioritizing. Because then being that we are communicating with principals, with schools, with parents of these schools, communicating with other principals, with teachers and so forth, then we're able to say, oh, this is what is already being prioritized of these things, which one really rises to the top, and then we can give you that feedback. You know, if you've got 5 things, well, we can tell you which of those 5 things is really getting to you.
I definitely will bring that feedback, as part of my summary from today's meeting for sure. I think that we don't, like right today, January 17th, and you guys submit, we don't have a defined, identified amount of projects moving forward yet. So we look for those forms, because that's what I know, we look for the forms to help, like incorporate and prioritize. So I don't think we have one where I can say to you, hey, in December, say, right, after our proposal comes out in November, and say, hey, this is the projects we've identified in all of our boroughs, all of our districts. So we wouldn't have that at the point that the forms are being submitted and that the process is going, because the process kind of goes side by side. They run the same. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah,
we don't have a list yet, and we're just kind of adding on to it. We're developing it as you're developing it.
Right. Doing this every year for the past 8 years, and I'm still like a bit confused about it.
Okay.
It sounds crazy. The process of selecting the top 5, I think you do away with it
Because we always come up with this huge list of projects. Some of them are perfect for as Reso A, I get that, and some of them are level 5. It feels like we're feeling around in the dark to try and like read the tea leaves for what is gonna be appropriate. And I wish you guys would just go through our big long list and say, okay, yes, no.
Can I add on to that? Because I remember voting on it. There was a parent from, I think it was 154, they came, and they had like an electrical issue where like there's flooding and there's an electrical issue, but then they wanted, was it the auditorium and accessibility? They would have to make, they would in the auditorium, they would have to have accessibility, and we were like, well, of course you should get the electrical done, that is so dangerous, and she's like, no, we want the accessibility. They had, so it's like, also the schools are starting to like weigh, what can they get? They're both huge, but like.
And they lobbied kind of, and then we changed from the really dangerous electrical problem, we took that outside and prioritized the other thing that they.
Because they have a child, they have kids that need accessibility, and then like, they're like, we can't have.
But you're choosing between your choice.
But then.
We wish we had more money that we could just say yes to everything, to be honest. No, I hate being the school of no, that's for sure.
We can't shut up because.
So sorry, my back is.
That we could send the whole list to you, then we wouldn't be having this discussion with the parents, leader from the school, saying like, no, you should really get the electrical, but no, we really need this. You guys could be like, this is Reso A, and this is like a priority, or whatever.
Because we don't know, so we end up prioritizing something that maybe is not valid
Exactly.
at the expense of something, exactly, yeah.
Prioritize 5 things that
That are not gonna.
not gonna meet your criteria, because
We don't know.
you don't know.
Or you can even say to us like, oh, that electrical thing can be fixed immediately, then it's where they should. Like, this is right away, you talk to this person, or whatever, because then we can get people, and we can actually start moving the needle on getting things, issues addressed.
Also, I think it's vital, like, definitely communication. So this year, so, I'm saying that we definitely need a feedback process. Like, we send it to the guard and never get back.
Well, that's not accurate either. We do hear that, we have time frames, so we need time to process a couple thousand requests that come in all at the same time, right? Because that's when the money comes back. So we do have that process, and then we annually, it's really, we're kind of defined, like every year, nobody has to wait for our email in November to say, hey, we're gonna have a budget that's gonna get a proposal. So school engagement should be, or can be, all year long with principals. Your engagement with me and my colleagues can be all year long. Like, please don't wait until November to say, oh, I have like 5 million questions that I want to ask. We're happy and we want everybody to, I always encourage my district, like, email me with everything. Why not? Email me with everything. Email me with everything, and I'll happily continue to say, hey, this is not really something that should go on there. You know, if it's a water fountain, that's a DSF thing. If it's a small electrical problem, you gotta pull a couple things off the panel. That's really something you should have conversations with your custodians about. Bathroom minor things is custodian stuff.
It's like because they have brains, like a leak issue with it. Like, I think it's like a big issue. She's like, that went down. Someone mentioned earlier that we need to create, when there is already a big problem in our organization. So we're kind of where like what the body and what the school is, this video where it's like a flood fixed renovated, but there is still potential for their costs. They have the water, there's not a permanent solution to this, that's happening. So it's, and it's not a question right now, but it's me.
I wish we had, So unfortunately, our budget is more reactive based than preventative based, just because that's the nature of our buildings right now. Something like that where there's a pump that's not working, that's a DSS maintenance issue. That is not an SCA qualifying project.
Sufficient to talk about the,
It was not. Okay, and
but it's a different show.
Mhm. Well, if there's something that's out of DSS scope, like I mentioned earlier, then they can and should refer it to us.
It was, and you put it in the right, this was.
No, DSS should refer it to us. Yeah, because then it would be considered a more time sensitive item. DSS can declare it as time sensitive, they can declare it a state of emergency. And then things don't have to wait as the process, the normal process, because there's a sense of urgency behind it. We do rely on DSS. I think that our custodians are like our ears a lot of times and our eyes. So that's what Carmine's people, reporting back to him. And then him and over him and bring it to us.
So level 6 is that we're.
Five, no, I'm sorry. So 5 is the, worst shape, four conditions. We don't have a 6.
Oh, you don't have
We don't have a 6. We just pull it time sensitive or we pull it right out. We don't stick a number on that guy.
Question about like how it may work for the class. Meaning what this is doing. Okay, everybody so we need a lot of. That's something here's the class to car and then they come to do the work and we are going to know time and resources. So what happens to those classes from, you know, the working out? Whatever after that.
Sure, no, we want to be financially responsible as well. Regarding, yeah, no, it is definitely. If I went to answer like completely direct, I'm gonna try my best though. So absolute worst case scenario, if there's a contractor that's completely defaulting, we remove them. That's happened in one of your schools in District 15 recently.
Yeah.
It's hard and it takes a long time because there's a lot of legalities that we have to follow, before we can remove a contractor. But when we're able to, then we do, we continue, the process is long too, like, sometimes we see no work, but the legal process is a long time and we can't put another contractor there until we remove the one that's currently there.
I mean, from.
That's another good question. Who will be the full contractor? Typically, it could take long because maybe a contractor is on a bunch of other jobs. And pulling or having him pulled off one job to have a trickle effect on other projects that they already have a contract for. And then our legal department, along with our construction management team, who I'm not part of either, would evaluate the contractor and they can give them an unsatisfactory listing, which means they can't then. They want to be able work for maybe, I don't really know if it's like an exact amount of time or exactly, but they do, and they have, take a steps to remove them from being allowed to do. Welcome.
So, I don't know, does anybody else have any questions before we move?
Yeah, I have a question. Yeah, thank you so much to be here. I have just a question. Like, I would make this question. Like, what the CEC, what the community, what the New Yorkers can do to the Congress and give more funds to the school authority construction so we can have more finish on the schools, like I don't know, like example, like get more affiliation with private companies to get donations, schools to get, what we can do, like, to, well, how we can help the state construction department so we can get more funds to.
That's a good question. I think probably to just continue to advocate with your elected officials to bring that back up to Albany, and ultimately our budget comes from our mayor. So it's a trickle down effect, right? I will say that we have a very robust budget. And so we have an extra, not an extra, but we had a significant amount added since last year. Compared to other city agencies, we do have a nice robust budget that we get allocated to us every year. But hey, we definitely could always use more because there's a lot of schools and obviously there's a lot of projects that we can't address all at the same time because of funding constraints. Which is, I guess, just to keep advocating to your other electeds that you have needs so that they can help to advocate for you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
So we have a resolution on the agenda that relates to school construction authority. I want to hand it to you.
Okay.
And our council member who wrote the resolution is going to read it. And we would value any feedback that you can provide after she reads it. I'll share my screen. For the folks at home, and take it away, Katina.
CEC 15 resolution to demand accountability from the School Construction Authority. Whereas the New York City School Construction Authority, SCA, manages and oversees all major school-related construction and renovation projects in the city of New York. Whereas the SCA has an annual operating budget of $281 million as of 2024, and a 5-year capital plan for fiscal years 2025 to 2029 totaling $19 billion, all funded primarily by city bonds. Whereas the SCA is governed by a board of trustees consisting of 3 members, the Chancellor of New York City Public Schools, who holds the title of chair, and 2 other members appointed by the mayor. Whereas the SCA board of trustees consists of Chancellor Melissa Aviles Ramos, chair of the SCA board of trustees, and trustee Peter McCree, the 3rd seat remains vacant. Whereas according to documents provided to District 15 by the SCA, there are currently 52 open SCA projects in District 15, and no timeline for completion has been made available to the public or to the City Council Education Committee. Whereas there's a lack of coordination between the concerned parties, with the residents and families often feeling uninformed and unheard. Whereas school and district leadership, including principals and superintendents, do not have oversight or authority over SCA projects happening in their schools and districts. Whereas contracts are awarded to the lowest responsible bidder, such that contractors are not always adequately vetted during the bidding process, and the selection process for supervisory staff is not transparent. Whereas project delays and mismanagement negatively affect student learning as well as overall community dynamics. Whereas District 15 principals from numerous schools have reported significant problems with SCA projects, including delays, mistakes, structural damage, flooding, fires, and security risks, such as classroom logs being changed without notice and doors being left open while students are in the building. Whereas principals report that there is often minimal or no oversight of workers and that their requests for improved communication and oversight go unaddressed for extended periods of time. Whereas contracts are often paid in advance of the completion of work, resulting in significant outlays with sometimes minimal progress, as was the case at PM 15, where $11 million was paid to a negligent contractor whose work had to be overhauled. Whereas research has shown that these problems are endemic to the SCA, whereas these problems represent misuse of public funds and create risks to student and community safety. And whereas SCA neglect disproportionately affects students in disadvantaged communities who may not have alternative spaces or resources at their disposal. Therefore, be it resolved that CEC 15 recommends City Council convene a task force to study, develop, and implement reforms to the SCA, and to conduct a hearing on contract management, spending, quality control, and overruns. Be it further resolved that structural reforms to SCA include changes to the law such that the New York City Comptroller is a member of the SCA Board of Trustees, Be it further resolved that the SCA be required to develop stronger communication practices among school leadership, district leadership, elected officials, and the public. And be it further resolved that the SCA develop stricter internal protocols for meeting school and district-specific standards. And be it further resolved that the SCA engage in community listening sessions to identify concerns and respond to questions in order to take community feedback into consideration. And be it further resolved that the SCA regularly publish clear and accessible timelines of ongoing projects, as well as periodic reports to the City Council's Education Committee. And be it further resolved that the SCA establish a dedicated coordination team responsible for communicating with schools and the local community to ensure smooth workflow and reduce friction. And be it further resolved that the SCA review current protocols for bid selection to ensure that low-quality contractors are not awarded subsequent bids. Be it further resolved that the SCA provide training for new employees, particularly those at the managerial or supervisory level. And be it further resolved that the SCA establish a periodic review system to monitor contractor performance with the possibility of stopping work in the event of breaches in quality standards. And be it further resolved that the SCA utilize best practices and modern tools to facilitate project management and communication. And be it further resolved that the mayor appoint the third trustee to the SCA so that the body functions as designed.
Okay, so, the only thing I noticed on it, I want to capitalize mayor in the, on the first page in the third paragraph down. I guess we'll just go to public comment as we always do, and.
Yeah. Are there any comments or questions from people joining us on Zoom? I think it's just the interpreters right now. Is there anybody on the Mandarin line? Anybody on the Bangla line?
No comment, Bangla line.
Anybody on the Spanish line?
Nobody on the Spanish line.
Danielle?
Yeah, I mean,
Comments?
I know it's a little unfair, you just,
Just a little.
you
Just reading it.
you just had it read. Yeah.
Problem.
You know, maybe you just look at the therefore be it resolved. I mean, or does anything stick out to you? Is something you want?
I think I need to refrain any of my comments without really kind of like picking them
Yeah.
apart a little.
Yeah.
To be fair to myself, my
Right.
agency, and to be fair to you guys.
Yeah.
And I do know that SCA will provide an appropriate response to the resolution at a later date.
Yeah.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, that's okay. I'm pretty good off the cuff, but this is something a little bit, to be honest, above me.
Yeah.
But if I can, you know, I think that I know I kind of read this already, but not like this. It was a little bit more condensed.
Okay.
So I'm happy to take it back again. I know I have some homework for you folks. So I know there's a couple pages of it, but I'll add this to that if they can perhaps maybe start with a time frame where they feel like they can respond to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
You want to just start at the end of the line?
Yeah, move comments, CEC
Comments,
comments,
CEC
real
comments.
fast, family questions, comments? No, Bobby? Say the roll. Katina? Antonia?
You took out the part that, I asked you to take out about the, interviews. Yeah, and I actually want to ask you this question. One of the iterations of this resolution, had a resolve that asked the, SCA to interview contractors. And then I learned that that is a big no-no. Interviewing contractors is actually a vehicle for corruption. Is that true?
So I'm not in our contracts department, and I'm not part of even the walkthrough, the bidders. That's our construction
Okay.
management team. So it would be unfair for me to.
Right, okay.
Or for the minimal.
You can't.
knowledge I have of that.
Okay.
Yeah, it wouldn't be accurate.
And, well, I guess you can't answer this question either, but maybe you could take it back. If you could take it back with you, we had received this list of open projects in District 15. I think Tamara must have sent this to Raphael and Nicole.
Okay.
And our district superintendent. And I just wanted some verification if these projects are in fact still open, because this was given to us, or I think in like November, and I guess I would like an update on like how many of these are still.
I took a copy.
You took.
I did. And so I can say that design process, just to give you some like really vague gauging, design processes typically take a minimum of 12 months.
Yeah.
On like a complicated $5, $10, $20 million job, sometimes 18 months. Depends on structure and what's rotting away inside of it. Most construction projects, our construction projects are, scope is very important in how we assign a time frame of how long construction will take, just like our initial contract. And then it also is monetarily based. So just, I'm kind of using weird numbers right now, don't hold me to these numbers. We have 5 million, maybe they say it's a 12 to 18 month job. If it's 10 million, it's gotta be 18 months. If it's 20 million, 24 plus months. And I'm not using accurate numbers, but that's kind of their rationale, what they do the jobs, because it makes sense. The more money a job is, the more stuff that has to get done and the longer it's gonna take. And I'm not dismissing contractors, I'm just trying to be as transparent as possible. But when we start like taking apart a building and it's projected for 18-month duration, and the first 3 months of your work, you see that a spandrel ring is rotted out, we know immediately we gotta stop the work. Now it's gonna take 3 months to design that, to fix that, and then another 3 months of inspections before we can, so we're dead in the water for 6 months. It looks like we're not doing anything, but it's all this behind the scenes stuff. And in our older buildings, not that that's the typical, but it's very possible, not a spandrel ring, but that you have these kind of unforeseen circumstances and they quickly extend the duration of a project. You know, weather is a factor too, but I think we can kind of all project, okay, December, January, February is gonna stink. You know, for temperatures, a lot of stuff is not able to go if you have certain temperatures or rainy season. But I think the bigger hits are the unforeseen circumstances that we uncover, that you can only do so much probing and scoping before as you're designing, but until you start literally tearing off the roof, you don't really know what you're getting under it. Same thing with the parapet, same thing with even old windows. I know that really wasn't your question.
No,
but
that's all right.
But that's why, like, sometimes too, like, you feel like projects never end, and we feel the same way. Because and it's very frustrating for us and for our principals, and, they have to, you know, I try to educate my principals the best I can, and be really upfront with what's going on, so that they can tell their PTA and their parent community, because I know they are the forefront of all the bombardment of questions. I always offer, give them my cell phone, give them my email, give me as many questions as you can, but the reality is, it's really you folks and there are principals that are getting so many of the questions.
Yeah, I mean, I think for our principals, it's more it's the contractors, it's the dealing with the contractors that is the bigger problem than necessarily, oh, the beam is rotten, now we gotta.
No, like it's the duration of the project for the school more than the logistics of what's going on.
Yeah.
They can't see for sure. But I mean, I understand, definitely not my first time hearing these kind of conversations. We share in your frustration, that makes it any better. You know, I know I try the best I can to manage, a lot of personalities between contractors, principals and so forth, and getting everybody to work towards the same goal too, and getting our contractors to, we definitely do behind the scenes. We have bi-weekly meetings with our contractors where we're continuously going over the rule book with them and our expectations and protocols. So it's not something that SCA takes lightly, not me or any of my colleagues. We're very frustrated. We are a lot less polite with our contractors as well. And we need to we are advocating for the school and what we expect in the school when our contractors are in them, or when the contractors that we hire are in them. So we do share in the frustrations and look to always solve problems hopefully proactively. But a lot of times we're reactive with that as well, because there are circumstances that can't account for.
I just want to thank you for all the work you put into the resolution, for all of you that did that, so.
Thanks.
I know it's
Yeah,
a
thank
team
you,
effort.
Christina.
Yeah.
No question. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Regarding the timeframe, I'm sorry, I go off a little bit, so I'm trying, like, let's tangent, I should say. So based on your question was, like, putting timeframes on the list that you have. So I will speak with my director, who, handles more of Brooklyn than I do, just to see if what we can do to help facilitate some more, tangible timeframe, months, years, something that would be satisfying to produce for the community.
Great, thank you.
I don't know.
No, that's.
I'll ask, I promise I'll ask.
Yeah, no, that's one thing.
And feel free to reach out to me in Yvette, tomorrow, next week, any questions that you have or situations that arrive. It's really don't wait, as they come.
And I do really appreciate, I just want to make sure that that obviously this is nothing like personal.
Trust me,
This is not even your burnout.
I have 3 children in the public school system, and they were in the school system before I started working here. So I really understand that as a parent. I live in Queens my entire life. I'm very invested in the public schools because I'm a product of it. My kids are in it, all 3 of them currently. So it's a real investment for me. And I was in the private world for a lot of years and doing other things. And I found my home here because to me, it's like you can work to kind of do something, change things. My little bit at a time, but I don't have all the answers. I promise I will bring these all back and try to get you some clarification, especially on accessibility. I think that's really a valid point, and timeframes. The resolution is completely out of my hands, but I will definitely ask them if they can revert back with a timeframe for getting back to you.
Well, thank you for sitting with us.
It was really nice to see them, I have to admit. I like seeing how the other boroughs operate. Have a great night.
Thank you
Good
so
night.
much.
Good night.
Thank you. Nancy, did you have a question or comment about the resolution? No.
Okay, so I guess we will,
Move to vote.
move to vote. Let me go back here. Does anybody want to make a motion to, Jonathan? Jonathan, does anybody want to second the motion? Okay, Kwame. All right, I'll read the roll. Antonia, I vote, yes on the resolution. Leslie King?
Yes.
Vanessa Gonzalez Yoka? Yes. Okay, Katina Rogers? Jonathan Davis?
Yes.
Hans Arietta?
Yes.
Nancy Randall? Stanley Vidal? And Kwame Egerton? All right, great. The resolution passes. Thank you, guys. Passes unanimously. All right, well, Yuet, is gonna present next time. She passed me a note. She, felt like things were, little bit thick and so we will speak to her, next month. And I put my prisons report last, so I'll just give you a quick, summary of what I've been up to for, the last month. So last Friday, we had a great showing at our CEC 15 legislative breakfast. At least 80 people registered. We had many elected officials, school staff, and parent leaders, and they shared their vision for the district. Comptroller Lander kicked things off. Donovan Swanson led the effort on behalf of Borough President Antonio Reynoso. The electeds that came were Andrew Gunardis, Bobby Carroll, Marcela Mitayenes, Rita Joseph, Alexa Aviles, and Johanna Hanif. And we had various staff from other elected officials' offices as well. Our superintendent, Rafael Alvarez, spoke, as did principals and parent leaders from PS 958, PS 261, librarians equal literacy, 15K 497, or otherwise known as BHS, PS 10, PS 169, PS 295, MS 676, PS 15, Parents to Improve School Transportation, or PIST NYC, the Brooklyn High School for the Arts, they spoke as well. There were a range of topics discussed, including SCA accountability, libraries, arts funding, protecting migrant and asylum-seeking families, school transportation, the importance of Title I funding, the importance of mental health professionals and mandated services, and the need to revise building utilization plans in co-located buildings. The day was truly a team effort. I thank all of you guys for your support on that. I thank President's Council co-presidents Elton Dotson and Liz Sanders for their support. Thank you to Chobani and for Nancy for directing us to Chobani, and for Russ and Daughters, and for Bettina for helping us get food from Russ and Daughters. And thank you to Books Are Magic, who provided some of the band and challenge books that we raffled off throughout the event. Our district will continue to celebrate the diversity of the residents, and I'd like to continue a book raffle in some form at our meetings, if we can get people to actually come in person. Maybe if we do one maybe later in the year and put out a flyer or something, maybe people will come for that. So we'll announce another one in the future. Tonight, I have two banned books to feature to celebrate Black History Month, and another to celebrate Lunar New Year, which begins tomorrow. I have All Because You Matter by Tammy Charles, which offers love, hope, and affirmation through the Black experience. A lovely book. I'll pass that around if you all want to look at it. And Drawn Together by Min Lee tells the story of a grandson and a grandfather struggling to communicate across a language barrier, but find connection through art. And it is mind-boggling that these two beautiful books were challenged, but there you have it. Some announcements. CEC elections, they have begun. I'm going to put some information about those elections in the chat. Some links. If people want to apply, the councils that you can apply to are CEC, citywide, community education councils, citywide council on high school, citywide council on English language learners, citywide council on special education, citywide council for District 75, and the candidate application period runs until February 16th. I'll put the dates for the whole selection process in the chat for people. It might be too much text, but we'll see. Something that you may not realize, but Dr. Christina Melendez was appointed the Deputy Chancellor of FACE just before the holidays. The Borough President's Office wants me to let you know that applications are open for their capital funding process, and I have some links to put in the chat about applying for capital funding through the Borough President. There, you can also apply for capital funding through your city council as well. AQE is hosting an advocacy day on Tuesday, February 4th in Albany. They're gonna host some training sessions. Although it looks like those dates have already passed, but I'll put in the link about their advocacy day in the chat. And I did interview another parent, coordinator candidate just before the holidays at 896. I met with Principal Ruth, Rodriguez. The candidate had already been a DOE employee. She was a school secretary previously at Frank Sinatra. And she happened to also be a parent at PS 172, so principal was enthusiastic about this candidate, and hopefully they got the job. And that sums up my report. Happy Lunar New Year, everybody. This is my Chinese dragon that my husband brought me back from China. So enjoy your Lunar New Year, everybody. All right. Good night, folks. Oh, wait, I have to do public comment.
Oh,
It's not closed out. We have to just do a call for
okay.
general public
Any
comment.
general public comments from those joining us on Zoom? Anybody from the Spanish line?
Nobody on this Spanish line.
Anybody on the Mandarin line?
No comment from the Mandarin line.
Any comments on the Bangla line?
No comments on.
Anthony, I think you're the only person left. Any comments or questions? No?
No? Does anybody want to make a motion to adjourn? Yeah. Okay, Katina motions to adjourn and Vanessa seconds. All right. Good night, everybody. All
Good
right,
night.
we have adjourned the meeting at 9:18 PM. Good night.
Good night.
Yeah, you can email it. Good night.